Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the program, right? Today's Wednesday, or is it Tuesday? It's Wednesday, all right, thank God. And one day we are going to ask Westwood One to get me a clock that tells me what day it is. Anyway, maybe I need one of those watches that tells me the day. I only have the number, the date. Anyway, good evening, folks. The phone number, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I'm hoping that you'll call in and we could chat a little bit about what's going on in America at night. And I want to chat. I want to chat about a few things because, of course, El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, El Presidente, he held his first press conference today, and we'll get into that momentarily. We also have other tidbits of news that I want to get to. President Zelensky scheduled to be in the White House, I think, on Friday. I'm guessing this is not going to be one of those scenarios where he walks away from the table like he did with Secretary Bessent in that first round. We shall see how that goes down in Washington, but I would suspect we're going to get a deal. It makes all the sense in the world, right? Instead of being tried for war crimes, and I'm not saying he's guilty of them, but there's been talk, instead of him being lampooned for taking this money, not knowing where it's going, getting into a back and forth, but Biden said I could keep it, but Biden said it was a grant, but blah, 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 blah. He's doing the right thing, I think, for his people. Getting them the protection of the United States, going into business with, it's like going into business when you owe the mob money, right? Anybody else that wants to come after you, they got to go to the mob before they get to you, right? Now, I'm not saying the United States is the mob, but I'm saying we're the muscle in this situation. And I think this is going to work out well for all of us. I hope, and I believe that there's a lot of promise here. Let me see what else we've got here. First cabinet meeting. We got more security clearances being taken away, which is good. What else? There was something else that was really big today that I wanted to get into. Of course, we're going to talk about the big news from last night about the budget clearing the House. You've got no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, all going through the House. Will Mitch McConnell do everything in his power to hold it up? Will Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, destroy this thing? Will they tank it? Will they sink it? I don't know. I would suspect not, but what do I know? We also seen them vote against very, very qualified and competent appointees that President Trump nominated. So it's anybody's guess. But first cabinet meeting today, I remember Biden did that, and then he waited, I don't know, like 6 months or a year or some abnormally long amount of time before having another one. And only to come back, and when he came back, he brought Jill Biden with him. And she was kind of at the head of the table with him. It was a very interesting thing. But here's a clip from President Trump's first cabinet meeting today. Check this out.
We have to get to honest elections. We have to go back to paper ballots. We have to go back to voter ID. One-day election, ideally, or a short term, not these 48-day and 61-day elections where boxes are put in a room and, let's move the boxes because we're putting in a new air conditioning system. Then you see the boxes move, and then you say, well, where are all the boxes? What happened to the boxes that never came back? Now, our elections are extremely dishonest. We're the only country in the world that has mail-in voting and all of these different things that we put in. No other country in the world has it. France went to, they had some of the things that we had. and they went to same-day voting, all paper. And paper is very sophisticated now. It's a very sophisticated form of voting right now. It's a very safe form of voting. The other things for the governors, I wish the governors would do it, because the paper ballots will cost 9% of the machines, and they're 100%. Nothing's foolproof, but they're as close as you get.
That's President Trump discussing what happened in the past and what's happening in the future. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking at this article here about the FBI launching a probe into James Comey's tactics as FBI director. Now, last I checked, Biden pardoned his whole family and Dr. Fauci and a bunch of other. But one of those people that he did not pardon was James Comey. Now, I don't know that James Comey is a huge scalp per se, but if they get him, they get him, right? That's what I'm going to say. I've never been part of the club that wants to see everybody go to jail. I do. I mean, I wouldn't. I would like to see some accountability, but I've never, I should say, not that I don't want to see them go to jail. I don't really believe they're going to go to jail, right? All the bad guys. I don't think all the bad guys go to jail. I think a handful of bad guys go to jail. Maybe. You look back in time, and we're seeing a lot of things we've never seen, which is what gives me hope. But if you look back in time, we've never really seen a bunch of bad guys go to jail, right? Government gangsters, as Kash Patel calls them. We've never seen that. So maybe it is serendipitous that the FBI director is the author of the aforementioned Government Gangsters book, and maybe he'll bring some new nuance to the role of FBI director, where they might actually hold these people accountable with respect to the criminality of it. If in fact they can prove criminality on government people. And I think that's always the big issue. These people have qualified immunity under these roles that they have. He's going to be like, I was the FBI director at the time. I was doing what I thought was right for the country. Prove me wrong. And I guess they'll have to prove them wrong. And usually they can't, because they're protected. And this is the problem with the government gangsters. But I'm glad to see that they're pulling the drain plug on the swamp. Anyway, I'm glad for everybody that's tuning in on our radio. Those of you who are not hearing me well, or might be hearing a little static because you need a better radio, I got one I can recommend to you, because if you love talk radio, podcasts, and news, the C. Crane CC Radio 3 delivers exceptional spoken word audio. The clarity makes it feel like your favorite host is right in the room. With separate bass and treble controls, you can control the sound exactly how you like it. And the CC Radio 3, it pulls in long-range AM and FM stations with exceptional reception, and this includes features like NOAA, NOAA weather, and the 2-meter ham band. You tell me what other radio does that. And it runs on the included power cord or a set of batteries that gives you over 170 hours. Come on. This is reliable no matter where you are. The CC Radio 3 is what some are calling the almost everything radio. So listen to your favorite radio stations, listen to me, and connect via Bluetooth to stream an immense palette of content from any smartphone or any smart speaker. To order the CC Radio 3, just go to C. Crane's U.S.-based customer service. Here's the number, 800-522-8863, or visit ccrane.com/rich. That's CCRANE.com/RICH. And use code RICH, RICH, at checkout for 10% off orders over $75. Now, somebody who listens to the radio and is also known as the Tiger King from Netflix listens to this show religiously from prison, and he's scheduled to be with us in a moment. So keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez, and hopefully we're coming back with Joe Exotic.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And Senator, what do you make of Dan Bongino potentially to be the deputy FBI director?
it would have been inconceivable that a person with his background would be head of the premier law enforcement investigative agency in the world. He's a podcast ideologue without any qualification to head this investigative agency with profound and far-reaching power over people's lives to enforce the law and also to potentially misuse the law.
That's Senator Richard Blumenthal, and let me tell you, he sounds like he's high on something. I don't know what, but man, he's super mellow. What is wrong with that guy? Between making stuff up about Vietnam and saying dumb things like this, like Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent and investigator with the Secret Service investigating financial crimes. How is he not qualified to be the number 2 guy at the FBI? Just beyond me. I think Dan Bongino's immensely qualified. He's written more volumes and definitely discussed more volumes on these alleged crimes than just about anybody out there. And he's the guy that's got the job. So Blumenthal, too bad. Now, he also mentioned about his potential to misuse his authority, to misuse the law. And I thought that was crazy because somebody who's always talking about the law being misused against them is the star of the Netflix program, The Tiger King, Joe Exotic. And he's on the line calling us from federal prison. Joe Exotic, welcome back.
Rich, I appreciate you always having me, sir.
You bet, my brother. So, first of all, let's talk, man. How you doing? How's your health? And which prison are you in now?
I'm still in the Fort Worth Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas. My prostate cancer is out of remission, and now I got cancer in my left lung, so it's rough. It's really rough.
Praying for you, brother. I hope you recover very soon. And big shout out to everybody in the Fort Worth area, KLIF, WBAP in the building. And Joe Exotic, what do you make of Senator Blumenthal's comments about Dan Bongino not being qualified?
Rich, I listen to Dan every weekday on WBAP here in Dallas, Fort Worth.
I know you do.
From 11 to 2, and I listen to you every night. Dan is more than qualified for this job. I've listened.
This call is from a federal prison.
Years on the radio, and the man's intelligent. I just hope, what I hope, Rich, is the same thing that I hope with President Trump is, everybody on the radios talks about, how the justice system was weaponized against President Trump, which it was. Everybody knows that. But I pray to God that when Dan gets in there and takes office, right along with Kash Patel, that they don't forget how many normal citizens in this country that system has been weaponized against, including myself, and try and help make it right for some of us.
Well,
because the system is built against all of us, not just the politicians.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, a week ago I spoke with Rod Blagojevich, who was railroaded in Chicago when he was governor of Illinois. And this is a problem that faces people on both sides of the aisle. Somebody I'm not a fan of is Mayor Eric Adams, but Emile Beauvais and President Trump all in agreement that this was a malicious prosecution of a non-crime that the Biden administration was, at least the Biden DOJ, was bringing against Mayor Adams. So I think to your point, there's a precedent for this type of misuse of power. So let's talk about that and talk about any updates on your situation.
Well, Rich, a lot of people don't realize that Kamala Harris actually sponsored the very bill that put me in here for Carol Baskin, which was the Big Cat Safety Act. Then she got on her Twitter and bragged to everybody about doing it and encouraged everybody to watch Tiger King because they made that hit piece show make us all look like we were crazy in order to pass that bill. So, it's been weaponized against a lot of people for personal agendas. And, we have the evidence now on my official website, joeexoticofficial.com, where we have the federal agents that were in my case telling the witnesses how to lie under oath at my trial in order to convict me. And all I want is for this to make be made right. You know, all I want to do is move past this, go home, and forget this ever happened.
Now, Joe Exotic, I know that you mentioned the Big Cat Safety Act, and I have no doubt that there's something going on there. But wasn't the charge against you getting caught on camera trying to hire a hitman to kill Carol Baskin?
Well, what they have is they have an undercover federal agent in my office that I never even asked to come. They just showed up, and then they kept pressuring me and asking me to hire them to kill Carol, and they never got me to agree to a deal, agree to any money. They tried to get me to go buy a gun. They tried to get me to go buy Go phones, all kinds of stuff. But they, in the evidence that we have now with their very own text messages off of their phones, they put those animal charges on there because they knew that the murder for hire charges weren't strong enough to convict me, so they had to make me look like this horrible animal abuser in order to tug on the heartstrings of the jurors. And their text messages actually say that now.
Wow. Well, that's something to look at. Where do people go to take a look at that and fact check you? What's the website?
It's on joeexoticofficial.com, and just go to the evidence link. The videos of them doing depositions since my trial, admitting to perjury, are all there. And then, Rich, you know, they've got the hitman, Alan Glover, went one step further and took the film people and the lawyers all to the zoo since then and showed them where he hid a murder weapon in the woods behind the trailer house he lived at, because the original plan was to kill me in order to get the zoo away. No, it's all there.
This sounds like a part 2. You need a Netflix series part 2 telling your side of the story.
It was part 2. He actually said that on Tiger King season 2 on world television. And that's what confuses me the most, is why am I still here when the government witnesses got on world television, admitted to perjury, and then took the film people from Netflix to the zoo and showed them how they were going to kill me?
Well, you know, Joe Exotic, there is a new pardon czar in the White House. Her name is Alice Johnson. And I think after doing something close to 20 years, she was her sentence was commuted by President Trump issuing executive clemency. And I know you've made it many petitions for President Trump to consider executive clemency for you. And I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I think this is as good a chance as any, knowing that him and the team listen to this program. So in the minute that we have left, make your best appeal.
You know, my team is reaching out to Ms. Johnson, and I'm hoping that she looks at my case and looks at the evidence and talks to President Trump. And I would love to work with her. She spent enough time in federal prison to help change what's going on in here, because nothing right about what's going on in here. But, you know, President Trump, I've lost my parents. I've lost 7 years. They've all admitted to perjury. You know better than anybody how this system can be weaponized against you, and you don't have to be a president or a multimillionaire in order for it to be weaponized against you. Mm-hmm. I promise I would make you proud if you just give me a chance to go home and make this right.
There it is, Joe Exotic's message to President Trump. Joe Exotic, brother, God bless you. Godspeed. I hope that you recover very well, and we'll talk again soon.
I love you, Rich. Thank you.
God bless you, brother. Okay, amigos, we come back, and we're going to have some conversation on the budget that was passed in the House. Will it pass the Senate? We're going to have a congresswoman joining us momentarily, so don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
On this vote, the ayes are 217, the nays are 215. Majority voting in the affirmative, the concurrent resolution is adopted.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And that was the floor vote with the tax on tips, the budget resolution from the House. And I believe, do we have comments from Speaker Johnson on that, Count Delacula? Listen to this.
We got it done. We had the requisite number of votes to move this process along, and now passing the budget resolution in the House, it will go to the Senate. This is the first important step in opening up the reconciliation process. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us, but we are going to deliver the America First agenda. We're going to deliver all of it, not just parts of it, and this was the first step in that process. So grateful to my colleagues who worked so hard to get us here, and to all the leaders of the chairs of the committees of jurisdiction. Chairman Arrington did a great job on the Budget Committee, and Chairman Smith on Ways and Means, and all of our colleagues who worked on this. So a lot of work yet to be done, but we're going to celebrate tonight, and we'll roll up our sleeves and get right back at it in the morning.
That is a clip from Speaker Mike Johnson last night as this stuff was breaking just around the time we were wrapping up the show. And I want to go to one of those colleagues, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne from Texas, that joins us to tell us all about it. Congresswoman, welcome back.
Hey, it's great to be on. I appreciate you guys.
Oh, thank you. And let me say, I think, congratulations to you and to the Republican conference. This is a big deal, right? No tax on tips, border security, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. People said it couldn't be done. And again, it's not done, but it's out of the House and onto the Senate. Let's talk about it. What's your outlook like?
Look, I mean, we are looking to be able to get control of government spending. And what we passed last night includes a pathway to cutting $2.5 trillion of government spending. Now, is it enough? No, I would love to be able to see more, but at least it's a step in the right direction. And I'll tell you, between, the 218 of us that represent over 700,000 people in very distinct districts, we had one member who voted against it. If we had had two, this resolution would have gone down. This bill would have gone down. So I think, I appreciate you guys calling out and acknowledging the hard work that fellow Texan Congressmember Jody Arrington has done on this. But this is a step in the right direction, but we still have a ton more work to do.
Now, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, I feel like I've seen things in the lower house sometimes linger, take a long time to get passed. Here we are, I don't know, let's see, it's a month and 6 days since President Trump took office, and we've got the first congressional action on the agenda. It seems like it's happening in good timing for me. Your thoughts?
No, I mean, yes. So this is fine timing, but we have a lot to do. I mean, whether or not it's one bill or two bills, obviously, being a Ways and Means member, recognizing the fact how important getting our provisions from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act extended. I would like to see one bill on reconciliation, but this is a first step in the right direction. But we absolutely have to be able to get our budget bill. We have to be able to get our tax bill. We have to be able to get our border bill and our energy bill over the line. So again, this is a step in the right direction. I think, Congress, as you've seen it, we don't always agree on everything. And I think distinct from what we've seen with some of our Democrat colleagues is we're all independent thinkers. We all recognize the fact that we have separate, distinct districts, and it's important for us to be able to represent our constituents, but we may not always decide on what is best from a conservative perspective, but this is a step in the right direction.
Beth Van Duyne, with the exception of Congressman Thomas Massey, there was a unified support for this bill. Now, on the other side, it seemed like there was unified opposition. I find it remarkable that Democrats voted against tax on tips, ending tax on overtime and ending tax on Social Security. Do you think that comes back to bite them?
I would hope so. I mean, they are basically voting to shut the government down. And after how many times have we been told that that's something they don't want to do, that they don't support, and that here they are voting against it? I hate to think of our government being so tribal, but what we voted for was to acknowledge the fact that we are out of control in spending, that we actually have to be able to pass a budget to keep the government working, but we also want to allow this administration an opportunity to do the job that it has been, asked, begged, demanded to do by the American public, which is to make our community safe, secure our border, lead from a foreign capacity, and to also make energy, independent. And if you think about things that have added to our inflation and the cost of the economy, energy is at the base of it. And so I think adding all of those things to the bills that we're looking at is going to be utmost important to moving forward in America.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Folks, we're on with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne from the great state of Texas. And Congresswoman, I'm hopeful that this will, have at least the same fate when it gets to the Senate. I don't know if you share that enthusiasm. What do you think?
I share the enthusiasm. Do I share on the optimism? Maybe not. I think what you've seen from the Senate is they are not nearly as concerned about being fiscal hawks. They don't seem nearly as concerned about the pay-fors. We are looking at a $36+ trillion debt. The fact that we're spending over $1 trillion just to pay on our debt servicing. There's going to be a point where we're spending more on that. Well, we actually hit that. We're spending more on that than our defense budget. But we have to consider how much we're spending on our deficit, and we want to get to deficit neutral. But even deficit neutral does not begin to hit down our debt. So the fact seems more, attuned to what is actually in the bill than a compromise between what's in the bill and actually looking at our debt and our deficit is a little precarious. We are looking at $2.5 trillion in cuts, and I would hope that the Senate shared that. They don't seem to be as focused on it.
Yeah, lamentably. Folks, we're on with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne from Texas, and she had a press conference yesterday on an initiative that we think is very important. We call it DOGE. And I want to get your thoughts on that and an update on that from you straight ahead. Folks, we're coming right back with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The overall goal here with the DOGE team is to help address the enormous deficit. We simply cannot sustain as a country $2 trillion deficits. The interest rates, just the interest on the national debt now exceeds the Defense Department spending. We spend a lot on the Defense Department, but we're spending over $1 trillion on interest. If this continues, the country will become de facto bankrupt. It's not an optional thing, it is an essential thing. That's the reason I'm here. And taking a lot of flack, and getting a lot of death threats, by the way. I mean, I'd like to stack them up, But if we don't do this, America will go bankrupt.
America will go bankrupt. That's Elon Musk in the cabinet meeting that President Trump held today, discussing DOGE and the importance for DOGE and the importance of cutting spending and reducing our deficit. And I couldn't agree with him more, right? This is absolutely critical and imperative. And Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne from Texas, you know her. She's been here before, Congresswoman BVD. She had a press conference just outside the Capitol yesterday defending President Trump and Elon Musk's DOGE efforts, the Department of Government Efficiency, and the Congresswoman remains with us. Congresswoman BVD, tell us about your press conference and why you decided to come out swinging in support of DOGE.
Look, I mean, this is the DOGE caucus. I want to give credit to Aaron B. and DePete Sessions who are really pushing this effort forward. But the fact is that DOGE is doing the job that Congress should have been doing all along. They're looking at oversight. They're looking at waste, looking at fraud. They're looking at abuse. So they're identifying it. These are things that every single Congress member, every single American should get behind. When you start thinking about the programs that they have identified, the programs that they said, we could cut and not have to have, I have not seen one Democrat defend these programs. But what they are doing is they are attacking the messenger, but not the message. They're accusing him of being unelected. And I would remind them that every single bureaucrat, every single agency that is actually in charge of defining what the regulations are and trying to create those laws, that's coming out of unelected bureaucracy. This is happening over and over again. The fact is that you've got Elon Musk, absolutely brilliant, doing the job of oversight, identifying some of this waste, fraud, and abuse that nobody's defending, looking at it and seriously looking at where can we cut. And I have not heard one Democrat defend these things. But as much as we are, we have heard from our Democrat colleagues over the last 2 weeks in every single hearing, every single markup we've had, the fact is that he is doing God's work, and I will defend that. Because, hey, look, as a member of the Trump administration during his first term, I worked at Housing and Urban Development under an amazing Secretary Ben Carson. Mm-hmm. And I saw it firsthand. You had people who were not coming to the office. They had 3 day a week, and this is pre-COVID, 3 day a week teleworking. I was there for 2.5 years, and there were employees that never came to the office. This is absolutely ridiculous. How do you build a team around this? There was obvious waste, fraud, and abuse of the system, and I am just happy that somebody is finally taking notice of this. I have been calling for this, the regulations, since I have been in office for the last actually 20 years when I was on the city council, when I was mayor. But the fact that we actually have got so much momentum behind it, we need to continue, we need to support, and we need to codify a lot of these executive orders that you're seeing being put in place.
Outstanding. Well, listen, I appreciate you standing up for God's work, because that I believe that's what's happening here. We need to get this done. I've got kids that have to have a future, and we're not going to have much of a future if we don't start reining it in now. Congresswoman, I'm thrilled with all the work that you're doing. Let everybody know what else you're working on and how they could learn more about the work that you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that. Look, we have introduced a number of bills that we talked about yesterday. One of them is actually asking for we want to have outside audits on our government agencies. I think that's really important to have third-party audits. So we've introduced our Go Right bill. This is the third time, by the way, that I've introduced this. So we were Doge before Doge was a thing. We're looking at actually codifying Trump's idea for the number of employees that you've got. So if you've got 4 federal employees who are leaving, we are only going to increase 1. So you're going to only hire 1 for every 4 that leave. I think that's important. But also looking at the regulatory environment, the fact that in the last 4 years we have added, under the Biden administration, $1.3 trillion of additional regulatory costs on all of our businesses, our small businesses included. So making every single agency accountable for that, identifying the cost of the regulation and making sure that it's budget neutral or budget deficit neutral, so that if you're going to add a $1 billion regulation, you're going to have to take away that in other budgets and other regulations. So it's keeping them updated, but it's also not increasing the layers upon layers of bureaucracy, which is where we've seen the growth. So, if you think about almost 6 million federal employees, if you include our military on top of that, that's been the largest area of economic growth in our country in the last 4 years. We need to put it on the private sector. That's where you see the sustainable growth. That's what's not reliant on taxpayer dollars. And that's where we actually have to focus and concentrate our priorities. So I'm very thrilled. I'm very exhilarated, optimistic about what is going to happen in the next 3.5 years under a Trump administration. And I think that's what you see the conference, you see the Doge caucus focused on. And I could not be more pleased.
Amen to that. Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, as always, you are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I'm grateful for your time and, of course, for the conversation and the amazing work you're doing. Godspeed, ma'am.
God bless you. Thank you so much for what you do, too. I appreciate you guys actually having a focus on what some of the conservatives are doing and not buying into what we have seen the mainstream media do. So you have a great weekend. Thank you.
You too. Thank you so much. And amigos, your thoughts on all of this right now. Open phones across America, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
Costco has gotten a lot of visibility, more than we ever wanted or needed, because it's standing behind its current policies and procedures. And none of them are illegal. We've had every legal lawyer look at it. And none of them are new. None of them are post-George Floyd. These things go back literally to the company's founding. We took an executive vice president from operations and made him our first diversity officer over 20 years ago. We think of this as not so much for the social good, although I think it is. We think of this as part of a meritocracy. If we attract a broader talent pool, we have 300,000 employees, we attract a broader talent pool and we work with them all individually, given their different backgrounds, to be the best professionals they can be, we have a better employee base to choose from. And I think it enhances our ability to be a meritocracy.
That is the CEO of Costco, or the chair of Costco. He was on CNBC today saying, we're not changing our DEI policies. We think of DEI as part of a meritocracy. I don't know how he gets to that, even despite hearing his explanation. But what I can say is that I think this is kind of crazy. And if you look at what's going on with DEI across the board, look at this. It's a piece in Breitbart here. Really interesting stuff. All right, you have this shift that's, making its way across the country. Diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are crumbling, right? Because a lot of them were perfunctory. A lot of them felt pressured into doing this. When I say them, I mean corporations felt like this was their new corporate social responsibility, and they had to do it. Otherwise, they would, face the wrath of the mob. So now, this was once, the thing to do. Now it's not so much. So look at this list right here. Citigroup has eliminated race-based hiring quotas. Bank of America has followed suit. Goldman Sachs has abandoned its diversity mandate for IPOs. BlackRock kind of kicked off the DEI stuff, right, a while back. They've stepped away from this whole thing as well. Deloitte has told their employees working on government contracts to remove gender pronouns from their email signatures. I love that. Go Deloitte. Coca-Cola and Pepsi are rolling back DEI commitments as federal contractors. Even, look at it. If you notice, everything's federal, federal, federal. This is the Biden administration pushing this stuff. Now they know that there's no reason to do it because we're not going to get any extra money. Even Amazon and Google have changed some of their policies, and PBS shut down its DEI office completely. So how about that? And we're only a month and 6 days in. I love it. All right, folks, more to come straight ahead. Another hour of stimulating late night talk, and we're live. 833-4-VALDEZ.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Happy Wednesday, and I want to get into a bunch of things tonight. Looking forward to continuing our late night conversation with you guys, all right, the American people. So give me a call during open phones across America. Now, a few things we're going to talk about here because there's a bunch of things happening, right? 2 nights ago, I think I mentioned about some Christians being beheaded in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it's been, a widely underreported story, reported by a few outlets, Fox News amongst them, but few, very few. It was big on social media over the weekend, or maybe on Friday or so, and, picking up steam over the weekend. And that's it. And again, I don't expect it to be a headline forever. I think the bigger issue is, had it been any other faith, I believe that this would have caught in a lot more traction and the story would have a lot more legs. But it doesn't. It seems to be all too commonplace that it's okay to do this. That's the de facto position, I feel. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, Christianity at large and what it looks like at the macro and micro level in our country. Then a little bit later, I want to talk about aviation and, of course, what's going on with these planes. Yesterday there was a near miss with that Southwest airline pilot, saving the day. He hit the ground. Would look like a very smooth landing. Noticed that there was a small jet right in front of him. He had to pull right back up. It was wild. But thankfully, it was a near miss, and it was not yet another accident. So we'll talk a little bit about that, quick update on that, as well as everything else, right? There's just so much going on in the world. And you got to try to decipher this stuff because Washington throws a million things at us every day, right? There's all this talk about Gitmo, that they're closing tents, they're doing this, they're sending more troops, they're getting it ready. Oh, boy, lots to discuss. Anyway, I want to get into that. I also want to, circle back to President Trump and his first cabinet meeting today. That was a big deal. And I think we have some audio from that we haven't used yet. And I'll leave it a dealer's choice for Count Delacula. Go right ahead, sir.
I'd like to add that those million people that haven't responded, though, Elon, they are on the bubble. I wouldn't say that we're thrilled about it. They haven't responded. Now, maybe they don't exist. Maybe we're paying people that don't exist. Don't forget, we just got here. This group just got here. But those people are on the bubble, as they say. Maybe they're going to be gone. Maybe they're not around. Maybe they have other jobs. Maybe they moved and they're not where they're supposed to be. A lot of things could have happened. I wouldn't say that Biden ran a very tight administration. They spent money like nobody's ever spent money before, wasted money. The Green New scam, all of the different things they spent money on. And you've seen that. You've seen that with some of the things that I read in speeches. I read them and people can't believe when I read them. 20 million here, 30 million here for a little educational course on something, circumcision, right? Circumcision. $20 million to inform the people of such and such a country on other things and other things other than that. So, those people are, right now we're trying to find out who those people are that haven't responded.
I'm wondering who those people are. Who isn't responding to this email from the Doge people saying, hello, what are the last 5 things you did? Or what are 5 things you're doing at work? Listen, I hate emails. I hate meetings. I love this job, by the way, because I don't have to do a lot of that. But I remember having a job. I once worked in higher ed. And, with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And really, the only hyperactivity I have is my leg. It doesn't stop shaking. You could see me, like whenever you see me on camera, you'll just see me shaking. It's my legs. My legs are going 1,000,000 miles a minute. And more so if I have coffee. But anyway, the point I'm making is I once worked in higher ed. And I was the head of the admissions department. It was a smaller 4-year college. And so what ends up happening is my office was the admissions office, but we also covered marketing and communications. So, pretty much all external affairs went through my office. All of the marketing, advertising, radio advertising, TV advertising, all of that was my responsibility. And I was part of the leadership team of the school. So, as a department head, I would have to go to these meetings with the president's cabinet occasionally, give my report and whatnot. And I remember there were times where there were committees. And I was sometimes on multiple committees because as a private school, they needed to recruit students and maintain a pretty healthy enrollment in order to remain financially viable. So I was there to, not to give the CFO's report, but to give my report and my forecast on, what I think we have in the pipeline, what the next class was going to look like, what the next spring and fall semester was going to look like, so that they could, make their financial forecasts accordingly. And all of that to say, there were several days that I remember where it was 8 hours of straight meetings, sometimes with the same people, or, this 10 people, then -4, then go back to the next meeting where it's 6 of those 10, that type of thing. Interchanging a few here and there. And for me, and I loved all these people. These are wonderful people. I still talk to them until this day. And I still volunteer my services whenever needed at the school. And I haven't been there since 2016. But the point of it was I would go crazy in those things. And I remember taking an ADHD medicine. And for the first time ever, I was able to not shake my legs, sit there very calmly, and not, wring my hands and, excuse myself to take a walk to the men's room just to get out of there or to go get coffee or, I forgot my pen. Oh, let me get my laptop. I always had something to do where I had to move because I couldn't sit there. And you look at that and you think, but even in that state, I could always tell you the last 5 things I did or 5 things that are pending on my desk that I had to take care of. I think everybody should be able to do that, right? It doesn't matter what your job is. Even if you have a very, very simple job, just show up and sit in a chair and greet people, concierge, doorman, security, anything like that, right? I'm sure that I got to check in packages when they come. I got to check the cameras. I got to make sure we've got the keys for this, that, and whatever. I got to make sure that the person that's relieving me has what they need. And I check the logbook from the guy who was here before me. There's multiple things in whatever job you have. And the fact that people aren't responding to this, you could say, all right, look, I didn't get it. But when it's a headline every single day, when the media is out there saying that Trump and Musk are dismantling the government, these unelected bureaucrats like Elon Musk are spying on your Social Security, it's stealing your identity, right? They whine every single day. I can't get away from it. Trust me, I'd like to. I'd love nothing more than to see, the word in Spanish is farándula, right? Farándula is celebrity gossip. I would love nothing more than to scroll on the internet and see nothing but celebrity gossip. Instead, I constantly see these breaking news things. Again, I like it. It's my thing. But my point is it doesn't give your mind a break. And these people, no matter what kind of break you're on, I don't know how many people, knowing that this is a huge initiative from the federal government, haven't responded to this email, especially when Trump was on TV saying, if they don't respond, then we'll know that they're sort of fired. And if they really don't respond after a couple of days, then they're really fired. Well, if that's really the case, then maybe you should respond to the email. Or don't. By all means, please don't. You're helping us drain the swamp, right? Like self-deportation, we've got self-draining of the swamp. I love it. I think it's a great thing. And then they could try to find a job somewhere else where they don't have to report on what they do or be accountable. But I'll tell you, kind of tough. You could be good at all sorts of things, but people aren't going to pay you to do nothing unless you work for, some agencies in the government. There, yes. The government loves to waste time and spend money foolishly. And that's why I'm always behind what they're doing with the Doge cuts. Always. Because I saw it firsthand at the state level, and I thought to myself, man, this is fraud, it's waste, it's abuse. It really is. All right, folks, we're going to get into a little bit more on that. We're going to continue our conversation on a number of topics, not the least of which was what I mentioned a little while ago, which was these slaughtered Christians, beheaded, as well as a couple of other things that are going on. So keep it locked right here, folks. Your calls and more, of course, are coming up as well. After that, we've got open phones across America. The phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
In a chilling escalation of violence, the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, has once again become a blood-soaked battleground for Islamist militants. On February 13, 2025, a horrifying attack unfolded in the northeastern territory of Lubero, where 70 Christians were beheaded inside a Protestant church in Kasanga. The perpetrators? Suspected members of the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, a ruthless group with ties to the so-called Islamic State, ISIS. This latest atrocity has sent shockwaves through the Christian community and underscored the growing Islamist stranglehold on parts of the DRC.
That report from Briefly, and I should say that news brief from Briefly. Sounds better, right? Anyway, this is a horrible thing that I hope never happens again, but I'm not an ostrich and I don't bury my head in the sand. I realize that we live in a fallen world and that heaven likely won't exist on earth, at least anytime soon, and that we're going to go through hardship. And this is part of the hardship that I think was promised to us. Heaven is somewhere else, and my hope is that we all make it there one day. But this is just brutal, right? It's brutal to see that this is going on. These 70 followers of Christ murdered for their faith. And I want to talk about that and largely what it looks like in America lately, what our faith looks like here, how we take it for granted at times, what the persecution against Christians is globally. And a book called Stockholm Syndrome Christianity, Why America's Christian Leaders Are Failing and What We Can Do About It. And it's a critique on the modern state of the church. And I've got my own critiques on the church. You know, that's just how it is. So let's dig into this conversation with the vice president of the Discovery Institute, and his name, Dr. John West. Sir, welcome.
Rich, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I guess we'll start with your reaction to the report we just heard about these 70 Christians that were slaughtered in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yeah, it brings home the sharp reality of just how much Christians around the world are facing persecution. You know, the estimates are that over 380 million Christians around the world are facing really harsh persecution. And in Congo, which is a 95% Christian country, but they're facing this threat from the Islamist sort of military types. And so, you know, last year several hundred people were killed, 10,000 people displaced in that country alone. And, you know, you find similar things in Nigeria, elsewhere. But what's interesting, again, in the Congo is it was an overwhelmingly Christian country, but they're being victimized and terrorized by these Islamist militants.
And folks, again, we're on with Dr. John West, Vice President of the Discovery Institute and Managing Director of the Discovery Institute's Center for Science and Culture. And, this is obviously, I think, something that falls into your wheelhouse pretty regularly as you're looking at, how the culture is evolving in our country and globally when it comes to Christianity and the persecution thereof. I guess this doesn't surprise you. I'm sure, like me, you're equally disappointed in it. But do you see any upward or positive trends when it comes to Christianity, or is this persecution just as bad as it's been? And is it getting better or worse?
Well, worldwide, unfortunately, I think it's getting worse. And one reason for that is the countries that could be helping a lot more, like the United States, we don't make that an issue. And part of that is the way the media, the mainstream or establishment media, does not cover issues like this. And I actually talk about some of this in my book, which I have a chapter about information sources. And the fact of the matter is most establishment reporters and journalists in the United States, they're not connected in any real sense with any religion, whether it be Christianity or Buddhism or Judaism. And so for them, religion stories, other than scandals, like a scandal with someone,
right,
isn't really an issue. And so this horrific massacre that you just talked about got very little coverage compared to many other things worldwide that gets. And so then it doesn't become an issue. And then, so part of solving these things around the world is making sure that Christians and others around the world know what's happening to people in other countries, because then the pressure gets to bear on it. Or in this, idea, there are things that one could do to help the nation put down those vicious rebels and to try to eradicate them.
So you mean to tell me that the persecution on Christians is getting worse, in your opinion, because countries like the United States and programs like USAID are not out there supporting the relations for Christians across the globe? Shocking.
No, they are more interested in doing transgender operas in Brazil and doing a lot of other things like that. This doesn't become what they're most interested in. And some of the people, I quote one in my book, someone from one country in Africa who's talked about that even in his country, that I think was actually Nigeria, was warning that the Christians weren't unified against the terrorism that they were getting, and then as a result, more and more of it was happening. And he was actually warning people in the West, particularly in America, that if you don't get your act together, not only with regard to around the world, but around what's happening to Christians here in America, then you can expect more of the same yourselves. And this was 100%. A warning from a pastor in Nigeria to us. And I think that's true. We're not being, fortunately, killed or beheaded here, but you are having, kids who can't get through college because if they express certain beliefs, they're thrown out of programs like social work.
Yeah, well, listen, Dr. John West, we're going to talk about that. I have my own experiences dropping out of NYU because of similar. So we're going to continue that conversation as well as learn more about your book, Stockholm Syndrome Christianity, when we return. Again, Dr. John West is our guest, and we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
That's 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation with Dr. John West, Vice President of the Discovery Institute. And I want to discuss his book. Interesting title here, Stockholm Syndrome Christianity, Why America's Christian Leaders Are Failing and What We Can Do About It. Dr. John West, I want to ask you, why did you name the book Stockholm Syndrome Christianity?
Yeah, so the Stockholm Syndrome is this famous bank robbery in the 1970s where people were held hostage, but then after the being held hostage for over 100 hours, when they got out, the hostages had friendly feelings toward their captors. They actually had warm feelings toward the people who had victimized them. And this gave birth to the idea of the Stockholm Syndrome, where people sometimes who are abused or held captive end up, in a very strange way, identifying with their captors. And I thought that this helped explain a lot of what I was seeing among leaders in the Christian community, whether it be in politics or the entertainment industry or even churches, where they were sometimes adopting more the point of view of the culture around them that actually didn't like Christianity than they were basically adopting the point of view of their own faith tradition. And I thought the Stockholm Syndrome was a good way of describing what I was seeing.
And tell us about, I guess, the rest of it. Why you think Americans' Christian leaders are failing, and I guess the subsequent part of your subtitle here, which is what we can do about it.
Yeah, well, let's just talk about the issue of religious liberty, which we were talking about earlier. And
Sure.
in other countries, people are being killed. But here, in the last 4 years, there were over 500 attacks on Catholic churches and pro-life pregnancy centers. Over 500. We're talking about arsons. We're talking about satanic messages being put on them. Windows broken, statues destroyed.
Firebombing.
At the same time, firebombings. And yet many Christian leaders are loath to even speak up about that. We all saw and there were differences of opinion about this, but during COVID, we had churches shut down at the same time in states where they opened up casinos. Now, if it was serious enough to shut down churches for a year, then, opening up casinos at the same time, you're having a double standard. Yet in many of these cases, like in Nevada, where I was just talking about, the person who did that was a church-going devout Catholic governor who campaigned as a devout Catholic, yet he opened up casinos at the same time that he put special restrictions, onerous restrictions on churches. And, too many Christians weren't willing to stand up for that. In my own home state of Washington State, you had a grandmother who was a florist, and she would serve everyone, but she had one line that she drew, that she didn't want to do special floral arrangements to celebrate gay weddings because she didn't think, that wasn't consistent with her faith. She'd sell the flowers, she just didn't want to do a special arrangement honoring that ceremony, and she was driven out of existence. She's no longer a florist, but the attorney general who did it in our state, who drove her out of existence, was a self-identified Christian who, when he campaigned, touted that he was a member of a local church. So this is my point, is that it's not just the atheists or agnostics or nasty secularists. In many cases, it's the self-described Christians who are enabling this sort of persecution, even in our own country.
So it's a lack of a backbone.
Go ahead.
Right?
Is that lack of backbone? Yes, it's not just for lack of backbone. The people who are doing this are actually identifying more with they think they're doing good work by persecuting these people. That's why I think Stockholm Syndrome, they sort of adopted the point of view of
vacillating on the issues.
People persecuting.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
next step, what do we do?
Yeah. What do we do? So I list a lot of different things, but whether you are a parent or just a congregant in the pews or say a church board member, there are lots of things you can do. Number one, this is just very simple, is do no harm, by which I mean if you're funding, a lot of people are funding, say, institutions that maybe they have warm feelings from because maybe they graduated from a college 20 years ago, a Christian college, but now it's completely different. They're still bankrolling it. Or they're writing the checks to a charity that they don't really know what it's doing. And so, number one, make sure that your time, talent, and treasure is not enabling the things that you think are bad. Because sometimes people they don't look into what they're actually supporting. But second of all, is pay attention where you're getting your information from. If you're just learning today about this massacre of Christians in the Congo, well, maybe your information sources aren't great. I mean, it's great that you listen to this show, but who else are you getting your information from? And because that impacts a lot of our actions in the world, is what we think is real and what media sources we use. So that's another thing that people can focus on.
Yeah, really good point. And I was sharing with the audience prior to you coming on, and when we talked about it a couple of nights ago, that it wasn't very even easy to find a lot of sources reporting this story, to the point where I had some listeners criticizing me, saying I was making it up, that it was fake news, because they couldn't find any reporting on it. And I think that's a very serious point. And the advice you give is accurate. I think, check yourself, right? Check your sources, figure out where you're getting your news from. There's a lot of good sources out there. You just have to kind of stay plugged in to a lot of them. Now, Doc, I want you to share with everybody a little bit about the work that you're doing at Discovery and through your center in particular, and how they can learn more about that work.
Sure. So Discovery Institute is a nonpartisan think tank educational organization. We have programs in a variety of areas dealing with homelessness, technology, or what I work on are many friends of many scientists who think there's evidence of purpose in nature. It's not just a random blind process. And people can find out more about it by going to discovery.org, and they can find out more about my book at Stockholm Syndrome Christianity.com.
Outstanding. Folks, make sure you check out the book. Get a copy for yourself, one to give away. The book is Stockholm Syndrome Christianity, Why America's Christian Leaders Are Failing and What We Can Do About It. Check out the aforementioned website. And Dr. John West, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it, sir.
Rich, thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Talk soon. And amigos, to your calls we go. Straight ahead, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, you're a true patriot and a Latino voice. We need more of you in America. And keep up your good work, Rich.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez, keeping you company straight till midnight and 1 a.m. in some parts of the country. And we are going to go to open phones across America. I see Nance says, can I go 5 minutes without lying? Nance, are you there? Of course you're not there, because you're a coward, Nance. Call back. All right, let's continue. Let's go to John. John's in Lanham, Maryland, WMAL. John, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was just telling you, call taker, that as far as like the people who haven't responded to the email that the Doe's people had sent out, there was a guy who called in earlier. I think it might have been on Dan Bongino's show on WMAL, but he was saying that his daughter had called him and said her husband, who's stationed, I think it was in North Carolina, but don't quote me on that. He was saying that he was told by his supervisor not to respond to that email. And he was like, in a quandrum. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know that, go ahead and do it on, like on his private device or what to do. So maybe that might be one of the reasons why.
It very well may be, John. I could totally see the union being involved, saying, look, no, you don't have to respond to anybody about anything. This guy's not your boss. He's not whatever. He's just, acting on behalf of the executive branch, on behalf of the president. And you don't have to do anything. Let him fire you. We're going to sue him. It's going to be like every last government shutdown we've ever had, where you're going to get your job back plus the back pay. You watch and see. They're going to regret this day. They're messing with the deep state, right? This is how the deep state thinks. And listen, I'm not putting it past them that they're not going to try and achieve all of those things. I think that President Trump has a lot of really, really good attorneys on his side, and he wouldn't put himself in a position to fail. But he is a risk taker, and he's always willing to push the envelope. So we'll see how it ends up. But listen, I think ultimately, if that's the news of the day every day, and your boss is saying, "Hey, look, we want to know what you're doing," then you should comply. And if you're not going to comply, then be willing to endure the consequence. Right? That's all I could say. John, thanks for that tidbit of information. I appreciate it. Shout out to you and everybody listening on WMAL. Let us continue. Let's go to Steve, Kingman, Arizona, streaming the program tonight. RichValdez.com. Steve, go right ahead.
Yep. I called about the employees that a lot of them are upset they have to go back to work because they may have moved out of the area. I was looking at you take, say, this Oakland, San Francisco area, you're getting almost a 50% pay bump in what's called locality pay to adjust for the high cost of living. So you, like a GS-13, you should be getting between 90 and 120,000. If you're there, you're getting from 130 to 170,000. So you're getting $40,000 to $50,000 bump in pay because you're in a high cost of living area. If you move a couple counties over into the center of the state or to the heartland of the country where your cost of living isn't that high, I'm not an expert on the GS pay system, but I would think you're supposed to tell somebody and your locality pay should be adjusted accordingly. I know the federal government's not that sophisticated in those things, so maybe there's nothing illegal going on. I think someone should look into that.
Yeah, listen, not a bad piece of information, not something I even knew. Again, shocks me. It shocks me how many perks there are in the federal service. It shocks me. And I'm rarely shocked, right? I really am. But this is, man, I mean, it's almost like, man, it's like hitting the lotto. Right? What job is better than this besides being a CEO of like a Fortune 10 company? I don't know anybody who's getting that kind of money in a regular job, right? I think for the most part, I think it's safe to say working in the government is at least perceived to be a regular job, like a doctor or whatever, like a lawyer, a teacher, just a regular job with a multitude of different levels of professionals working in there, anywhere from administrative to executive. But man, this locality pay and getting an increase just because you live in a more expensive neighborhood. Just imagine, right? Just imagine I turn to my people and I say, hey, listen, guys, I'm moving to the Brickell section of Miami. And, it's a little bit more expensive there. So I'm going to need you to step it up a little bit. I mean, I could do that, but they're under no obligation to comply. And here we have the federal government just simply offering this because you've achieved some sort of magical number and letter. It's a godsend for those who have it. And this is why I think the deep state, the pension and the paycheck, man, it controls a lot of people because once you're in, you're in. It's like a mob, right? Blood in, blood out. It fascinates me. It really does not mimic the real world in any way. And something Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne said in our conversation, she said, the largest sector for growth was the federal government. That, during the Biden years, that is a scary concept to think, that we're concentrating power there, we're concentrating resources there, we're concentrating our talent there, and that is what's growing, the government and not the private sector. That's scary. That's definitely scary. I want to thank you for your call, Steve in Kingman, Arizona, streaming the show. I appreciate it. Hope you'll call back again soon. And the rest of your calls and more are coming up. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez, live and national. Let's hit the phones, open phones across America, 833-4VALDEZ. And let's go ahead and go to James calling us from Eugene, Oregon, KUGN. James, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. I really appreciate you giving a little attaboy to the Proud Boys and getting them out of jail. They were some real help, for people that, just have a different opinion in Oregon. And, they were heroes in my book. And, the way Portland burned for like a year,
Yeah, James, it's funny you say that. And honestly, my support was for anybody who I felt was wrongly jailed. It wasn't necessarily for the Proud Boys, but for people who were just, wrongfully, in my opinion, put into jail. But when you talk about Portland, I have a buddy, and I guess I could say this on the radio, Mike Strickland. He's a, an independent journalist. I did a lot of work with him many years ago. And he's from Portland. And he got into a world of hurt back when they were having these just almost weekly riots. And, if you're from Portland or, even the area, you probably remember, and it may still be happening, but you would have the Proud Boys or other, pro-America groups showing up to be counter-protesters, to go against Antifa, to go against Black Lives Matter, to go against any number of left-wing progressive groups at like local parks, and these things would end up becoming riots, right? Antifa would bring these, what they called were flags, and these flagpoles, they would use them as spears, and they would start attacking people. And it was a brawl. It was an all-out brawl. And I remember seeing that, and, back then everybody was thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to end up being a civil war in America. And I just remember seeing this and thinking, this is problematic, and we're not headed in the right direction. And thankfully, I think we're now headed in the right direction. But I'm glad you brought that up, because it's been a long time since I've even thought about how contentious things in Portland were, where people were getting into fistfights on a regular basis over these protests and counter-protests. So, it's my pleasure to talk about that. It was something that, I saw my own friend go through, Mike Strickland, and, to the point where he had to defend his life, and he got in trouble for it. And it was really really terrible, very tough to watch. It really was. So James in Eugene, Oregon, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. KUGN in the building. And let us continue. Who do we go here? We go to, let's see, Matt, La Plata, Maryland, WMAL. Go for it.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. We've spoke before, and love your pronunciation, which is right and proper. We know that. Hey, look, I'm a retired Marine and a current government employee.
Thank you for your service.
Blue collar. Oh, absolutely. No, I received one of those Doge emails. And just as fast as that came in, though, when I fielded that email, there were already other emails in there telling us basically to, stand down and
Who was
wait
telling
on
you
this.
not to answer it?
It was right. In short, not to answer it, but at the same time, union.
No, I'm saying, was it your boss, or was it the union, or who?
More just a supervisory line waiting for further direction.
Right, clarification.
Right? Now,
Got it.
Right, further clarification on it. Now, that said, as a Marine, okay, I'm very cognizant, did over 20 years, retired as senior enlisted, master sergeant. Chain of command, exactly. Chain of command. And I think that's what's kind of getting missed. It wasn't that it was a bad order by any stretch. It was the manner of which it has to come down for us to have clarity.
Right, came from the commander-in-chief's office as opposed to somebody more frontline. Got it. Matt, thank you for your call, brother. Brody, hang on if you can. Amigos, we continue our conversation. There is more to come straight ahead. But if this is the end of the road for you, hasta la próxima. I'm coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's the Wednesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. Of course, we're taking your calls toward the end of the program. Open phones across America. Actually, I'll be taking it as soon as I can, so if you want to get those calls in now, feel free. And I want to get into a bunch of things. There was a story that came out, I think it was just yesterday, but it's being solidified. And, sometimes I like to wait before I talk about things because I don't always have the full scoop on everything. But Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, has fired more than 100 intelligence agents over transgender sex chat messages. That's right. You've got federal employees, intelligence officers that were engaged in transgender sex chats on government devices. And over 100 of these people have been fired. Listen to this.
What we're going to do has already been done. There are over 100 people from across the intelligence community that contributed to and participated in this, what is really just an egregious violation of trust. What to speak of like basic rules and standards around professionalism. I put out a directive today that they all will be terminated and their security clearances will be revoked. But the thing here, Jesse, is like we got to take a step back because this is just barely scratching the surface. When you see what these people were saying, and thanks to Chris Rufo for putting it all out online, they were brazen in using an NSA platform intended for professional use to conduct this kind of really horrific behavior. And they were brazen in doing this because when was the last time anyone was really held accountable? Certainly not over the last 4 years, certainly not over the last 10, maybe 20 years. When we look at some of the biggest violations of the American people's trust in the intelligence community. So today's action in holding these individuals accountable is just the beginning of what we're seeing across the Trump administration, which is carrying out the mandate the American people gave him. Clean house, root out that rot and corruption and weaponization and politicization, so we can start to rebuild that trust in these institutions that are charged with an important mission of serving the American people, ensuring our safety, security, and freedom.
Again, that's Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, former Congresswoman, Lieutenant Colonel, retired. And Tulsi Gabbard said there are over 100 people from across the intelligence community that contributed to and participated in this, which again is a transgender sex chat, which is really just an egregious violation of trust. She said that in an interview with Fox News that she had issued a directive to terminate these employees, ending their security clearances, and that sounds appropriate. And what she's talking about is a national security agency, an NSA platform designed for sensitive security discussions. It's called Interlink, the Interlink chat system. And this week, online activist and author Chris Rufo, we've had him on this program, and Hannah Goodman claimed that the staff were using it for wide-ranging discussions of sex, kink, polyamory, and castration. These chats, according to Rufo and Goodman, were legitimized as part of the NSA's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, Gabbard thanked the activists for highlighting the issue and said it was barely scratching the surface. They were brazen in using this platform. You just heard her in the clip say that. And this is why she's decided to hold them accountable, which is her job. And kudos to her for doing it so swiftly and so decisively. Now, I think this is a big deal, right? I don't want to make this sound like it's just another day at the office where over 100 of our intelligence people in the United States, national security people, were engaged in a sex chat that they thought was very private and secure because this is a secure network used by spies, right? Spies and other intelligence community members. I think this is crazy. Anyway, the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, she sent a memo directing all intelligence agencies to identify the employees who participated in the NSA's obscene pornographic, and this is a quote, obscene, pornographic, and sexually explicit chat rooms, and to terminate their employment and revoke their security clearances. And she wrote that in an email to their bosses, to their agencies. The Central Intelligence Agency and Gabbard's office have already tried to fire dozens of employees working on diversity issues. That move has been paused by a federal judge who's expecting to issue a ruling this Thursday. The latest move follows Rufo and Goodman's revelation of transcripts of chats. One person was bragging in the chat of having transgender surgery, allowing them to wear leggings or bikinis without having to wear a gaff under it. As you know, a gaff, we talked about this a couple of months ago, is one of those bottoms that people that have penises, that's what they call them, right? People with penises, otherwise known as men, that men who want to wear a female bikini can use and to try and cover it up. I think the other term for it is tuck, that they were selling at Target. It was a big controversy over the summer. Anyway, others discussed laser hair removal, with one saying, getting my B blank 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 hole zapped by laser was shocking. Another wrote bluntly about estrogen injections. Look, I just enjoy helping other people experience boobs. Quote, unquote. Others talked about engaging in polyamory or ethical non-monogamy, with one claiming they were part of a 9-member polycule. I've never even seen this word, polycule, but I guess that's what it's called when you're in a throuple that gets up to 9. Elon Musk chiming in a very, very funny fashion, saying, well, at least we know what they did last week. That's funny. And you've got Gabbard saying this behavior is unacceptable and those involved will be held accountable. So good on them for getting to the bottom of this. And you've got Rufo and Goodman, the investigative reporters in this case, said their sources claimed that left-wing activists used LGBTQ plus employee resources and groups to turn their kinks and pathologies into official work duties with the full support of their superiors at the NSA. Gabbard, who oversees the 18 American spy agencies, responded, imagine that, we have 18 spy agencies. Wow. Responded to the report promising to clean house and confirm the existence of the chats which have been destroyed. This behavior is unacceptable and those involved will be held accountable, she said. These disgusting chat groups were immediately shut down when POTUS issued his EO ending the DEI insanity. The Biden administration was obsessed with it. Our intelligence community must be focused on our core mission, ensuring the safety of Americans, she wrote. Elon Musk, again, making his joke about at least we know what they did last week. I thought that was great and great timing. So, again, that's what's going on in the intelligence community. Cleaning house, getting rid of people who are bragging about having sex change surgery. I'm all for having surgery. If you need a surgery, have it. Have as many of them as you need. But don't have them unnecessarily. And if that's your choice, look, it's your choice. But I wouldn't recommend it, and I don't recommend the American public financing it either. So those are my thoughts. Of course, your calls and more coming up. Plus, yesterday we talked about, Midway Airport in Chicago, a near crash again. And another one today, where? Reagan Airport. Unbelievable. We're going to get into that straight ahead. Plus your calls. We've got calls that we're going to get to. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Pilots tell us while it is making headlines following the mid-air collision at Reagan National Airport and other recent plane incidents, what happened at DCA is actually a standard move. And this one was done flawlessly, with the plane landing safely soon after. American Airlines Flight 2246 from Boston Logan to DCA was coming into land around 8:20 Tuesday morning. That's when air traffic controllers told the pilots to go back up into the air to allow another aircraft more time for takeoff. It landed about 11 minutes later, again safely. Both American Airlines and the FAA telling Fox 5 the maneuver, which is called a go-around, is not abnormal. In fact, FAA data shows Reagan National has the highest number of go-arounds of all airports in the U.S. About 0.8% of all arrivals employ this technique.
All right, amigos, that was today, right? Today we're talking about another near crash, this one in Washington, D.C., Reagan Airport. Yesterday, we had one in Chicago. Was it right before the weekend? You had the one in Toronto. And prior to that, the one in Philadelphia. And prior to that, the one in Washington again. Just amazing. Amazing to me. And again, amazing because these things happen more often than we know, but they don't always get the type of publicity and reporting that they're getting now. So I want to get to the bottom of this with somebody who is a retired airline captain who flew for Delta Airlines for 37 years, landed dozens of times at Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C., and also served as a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force. Alan Campbell, a.k.a. Bullit. Welcome, sir.
Welcome, Rich. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
Oh, my pleasure. So, Lieutenant Colonel Bullit, I want to ask you, you've done this, a lot more times than I ever have. And I'm blown away by this. I don't travel a lot, but, I'm on a plane, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen times a year. And I've, other than some turbulence, I've never had an issue. Thank God, knock on wood, all of the above. But I feel like we're seeing them daily almost. What's happened in Washington today?
Well, I think you just see that daily now because it's so rare. When something like this happens, it gets massive attention for a few days, and then it goes off somewhere else. And if you think about the accidents on the interstate, the accidents in your neighborhood, those are common. Those are every day, so they're not spoken about very much. And so I think that kind of raises the flag that says flying is incredibly safe, and that's why an accident or even a near miss gets so much attention.
Yeah, and I guess there's a political aspect to this. We've heard some reporters blaming this on the new incoming administration, saying that cuts to certain budgets and whatnot are what's causing these things. And I find that hard to believe because these cuts are barely enacted, and these guys have been there for a month and less than a week. But the bottom line, I think, of all of it is, I agree with you. Airline travels safely. I was in Tennessee not a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, and the whole thing, took off, landing without a hitch. It was perfectly fine. A lot of people on the plane were nervous, but everything went really well, thank God. And so I want to, I guess, take your experience and pick your brain a little bit with having done this for 37 years as a pilot for Delta Airlines. In those years, how many of these near crashes have you been involved in?
Zero. And that's what's interesting about this story, because I never even had a flat tire, never lost an engine, never had a fire. Just about 100% of my issues were with passengers, either medical issues or, just something like that where you had to turn around and go back and land. But the flying, the airplane, the air traffic control in my career was just incredibly good.
And, what I find interesting about this is that you said that, because there was an interesting story, and I'm going to look it up and I'll share it with you in a moment, but of someone passing away mid-flight, and they were complaining that somebody had to sit next to the deceased person the whole way. And I'm just wondering, has that happened to you?
No, thank goodness that never happened to me, but I can certainly understand that because the flight attendants have to deal with all of that stuff. We're up in the flight deck, we've got the door locked, we mind our own business. We hear about things going on in the back, but we're not allowed to go back there and get involved because then that's a safety security issue. So the flight attendants deal with all that stuff. If the airplane has empty seats, then you could move somebody like that to a vacant area. But if the flight is full, then you really don't have a lot of options, and all they can do is maybe put a person in the back up against the side, cover them with a blanket, and the people that have to sit beside them are just very unlucky.
Yeah, right. It seems that way. Oh, man, there's an actual picture that they put out here in this story. Very, very interesting stuff here. And I want to get into your book and also get your opinion on the near crash that occurred yesterday at Midway Airport in Chicago. But just to put a finer point on this, this happened on a flight just yesterday. And a fellow passenger who offered up a free seat next to her to move the person, but they could, so that they could move this deceased person. There were a few spare seats, they're saying. They told the flight crew, but the trauma for those involved said it deepened when they were asked to remain seated while medical crews removed the unidentified body. I guess they weren't able to move it mid-flight, and they had to wait till they landed to move it. And very unfortunate. So 37 years, you didn't crash, you didn't get a flat tire. What were the issues that you ran into with people?
Well, I had issues when you fly these long-distance flights on the 777. You're flying 14, 15, 16 hours. And I was flying back from Japan, I think. Japan. And I had an Oriental man back there that was just being troublesome. The flight attendants called us and said he won't sit down. We're trying to serve a meal. So I was about to go on break, so I put on my tie and got all dressed up and went back there and spoke to him. And I don't have to be really diplomatic in that situation. I basically told him, the flight attendant's in charge back here. If they ask you to sit down, you need to sit down. And if you don't do that, we're going to land in Alaska and have you talk to authorities. And we never heard another peep from him. And it's just things like that. You just have to go back and be a little bit of authoritarian. And I think they honor the men. It's hard to say that, but I think they abuse the women and honor the men just maybe due to their history.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Folks, again, we are on with our guest. He is a retired airline captain for Delta Airlines, 37 years he spent in the air. And prior to that, Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Air Force, Alan Campbell, a.k.a. Bullit. So we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to learn about his book. His book is My Life Above the Clouds. We're also going to get his take on the near crash that occurred in Chicago yesterday, as well as any other thoughts he has on what's going on with aviation and airlines in the days to come. So, Lieutenant Colonel, stick with us. We're coming right back with Lieutenant Colonel Bullit momentarily. And, of course, if you miss any part of the program, any of these interviews that you absolutely love and want to share with somebody, just go to richvaldez.com. That's Valdez with an S at the end. And you can share it absolutely free. Subscribe to the podcast if you want, and you'll never miss an episode. All right, amigos, keep it locked right here. We're coming back to your calls as well, 833-4-VALDEZ.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right? That's right. But you're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Video captures the plane about to land at 8:50 a.m. when the pilots see a private jet entering the runway. They reverse course and quickly lift off.
Southwest 2504 going around.
2504, roger that, climb maintain 3000.
Air traffic control instructs the plane to circle back around after coming within seconds of a potential collision. The NTSB and FAA say they're investigating. In a statement, the FAA says, quote, the crew of Southwest Airlines Flight 2504 initiated a go-around when a business jet entered the runway without authorization at Chicago Midway Airport. A similar statement from Southwest. Quote, Southwest Airlines Flight 2504 landed safely at Chicago Midway Airport on Tuesday morning after the crew performed a precautionary go-around to avoid a possible conflict with another aircraft that entered the runway. The crew followed safety procedures and the flight landed without incident. And new audio obtained by Fox 32 appears to show air traffic controllers telling the private plane, FlexJet Flight 560, to stop short of the runway.
FlexJet 560, hold right there, sir. Don't move. Hold position 560.
The near miss comes amid recent deadly incidents, including the collision of a plane and Black Hawk helicopter at Reagan National Airport, and amid DOGE cuts to the FAA.
DOGE cuts at the FAA. Did that have something to do with it? As far as I understand it, they say no, others say yes. I'm inclined to think that no is probably the answer. But we're going to continue, and you're going to get the opinion of somebody who's been doing this for a very long time. He was a pilot with Delta Airlines, 37 years. They got the best cookies on Delta Airlines, by the way. And they give the little kids wings, which is cool. And he also served in the United States Air Force, retiring as a lieutenant colonel. Alan Campbell goes by the name Bullit. So, Lieutenant Colonel Bullit, talk to me about this one, because this one I saw yesterday, very interesting. The guy lands, makes a very nice landing, this pilot, and then all of a sudden this other plane is right in front of him on the runway, and he's got to pull this bad boy up, and he gets it up quick and flawlessly and saves the day. What say you?
It was excellent that they had such a good video of that because it told the entire story, from my perspective, because the Southwest pilots were in a perfect position. The weather was good. They're doing a nice landing. And as soon as they noticed the airplane about to enter their runway, simply added power, raised the nose, went around, no particular effort involved. That's a kind of a no-brainer. And then they asked some questions about how that happened. So the Southwest people did exactly right. The other pilot, there was some confusion. They have the video or the audio of that. There was some confusion about what they were supposed to do, and the air traffic controller had them repeat it to clarify it, and then they just taxied right onto the active runway. So that was really wrong on their part, and everything worked out exactly as it should. The Southwest pilots went around. They sorted it all out. They came back and landed, and it was just a good example of who does right and who does wrong.
Yeah, and Lieutenant Colonel, I feel that this may be, and I could be wrong, but I feel like with the spotlight being on so much of this, I could see someone being a pilot, maybe not like you with, more than 3 decades, almost 4 under the belt here, but somebody who might be newer at their job saying, I better not mess up because everybody's watching, and then messing up because of the pressure they're putting on themselves. What do you think?
I don't know. It's just an incredibly interesting job, maybe based on my background, because a lot of pilots nowadays just have, they were commercial pilots. They're fairly new. And mine was broader because I flew light airplanes. I did air shows. I flew military airplanes, and I flew in the airline. And, oh, by the way, I was a flight instructor. So my perspective was huge. And so these things just make crystal clear sense for me. And I'm never surprised about things like that. And I think it shows you what pilots are all about. They're just aware. They respond. They don't overreact. There's never any excitement. They just do the right thing. And that's one reason that they're good at being a pilot.
Now, I want to talk about your book. You've got a book, My Life Above the Clouds. I haven't read many books by pilots. I don't even know that there are that many. But I found it interesting that you've got a book based on the vast experience and perspective that you offer. Tell us about why you decided to write My Life Above the Clouds.
Well, it's a fascinating story because my dad was in the Navy, flew F-6F Hellcats off to Yorktown, and he came back after World War II, and he wrote a book. So, you think, okay, my life has been different. It's been, I don't know, just a lot of different things. It's not about flying. I actually raced boats. I won checkered flags, won national championships. And so I just wanted to write this book to say, I'm a normal American. What a great country. If you don't do drugs, you don't get arrested, and you just kind of focus on your life, what you can do in this country is impressive. And so I wanted to write this book, give it to your kids, have them read it, and then the light bulb comes on. They go, oh, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be an airline pilot. And I say have 3 or 4 choices because your first might not work out. Well, then go to 2, go to 3, but at least have a plan, and it can make a huge difference in your life.
Yeah, I agree with that. Having 2 kids at that coming of age right now, I can tell you that's my advice to them too. You know, have a couple of things. Plus, not every career is a lifelong career. You know, there's a lot of people that do a lot of things, or even like yourself, multiple things within the industry. Now, let's talk about the similarities. You know, your dad was a pilot, and then he wrote a book, and you were a pilot, and you wrote a book. What's the big takeaway of your book besides you know, career paths for the next generation?
Well, it's just what's available in this country for somebody that's fairly ordinary, that you can do those things, just go for it. You have to be successful. You have to, you know, work hard and plan and all those sorts of things. And I just think I was blessed by my family. They raised me properly. We had 4 kids. We've all done well. And you just have to be focused on that. Everybody's not going to be successful, and you may not want to be a pilot. You got to have 20/20 vision. I'm ambidextrous. I like it. If you don't like it, go do something else, because flying's not for everybody. But it just worked out well for me. And so that's why I tell people, just find something that you're going to enjoy. And by the way, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go to college. You don't have to be a doctor, lawyer, or Indian chief. You can be a mechanic. You can be a plumber. You can be a truck driver. But just go for it, be successful, and just have a wonderful life in the best country on the planet. So I want that positive spin to come out as people read or think about my book.
Outstanding. Now, if people want to get a copy of your book or pick up a copy for themselves and one to give away, where do they get a copy of the book, and how do they learn more about you?
Well, it's on Amazon.com. All you have to do is go in there and type My Life Above the Clouds, and it pops right up. You can get the Kindle version. You can get a paperback version. And the neat thing about the paperback is then you can give it to your kids or pass it on to somebody and just say, hey, look at this book. It might give you some good ideas about what you want to do in your life. And I won't get the results. That's unfortunate. But it would make my day to know somebody was successful because they read my book.
Outstanding. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Alan Bullit Campbell, I appreciate you being here and for sharing your story with us. Godspeed to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
You bet. And amigos, your calls and more coming up right now. 833-482-5337. It's open phones across America. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if the viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company till midnight or 1 a.m., depending where you are. And I want to go to the phones, open phones across America, 833-482-5337. Let us go to the phones. Nora, Stafford, Virginia, WMAL, go right ahead.
This is Nora. I'm a retirement estate planner in Stafford, Virginia, and I specialize in federal benefits and federal employees' retirement. And I heard you call it earlier, and you were surprised about the locality pay. And I thought, I'll bet there's some other things you don't know about.
Sure. Fill us in.
The federal benefits are magnificent. I mean, after they've worked there a while, every 2 weeks they get 4 hours of leave. A lot of them are off every other Friday. But the thing that bothers me is how much money the country is spending, because a lot of these people, as the last caller said, they are on remote in an area that isn't expensive, but getting the locality pay here.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is that people don't realize how many people are retiring on our dollars and how much. And I'll give you an example. In the area where I live, most of my clients are retired military who work for the government. And they get priority to work for the government because they're retired military, and that sounds great. But a lot of the retired military have never left this soil, never been in any kind of action or anything like that. But when they retire, just for asking, they get what's called 10% disability. Now, this is 10% of their retirement that is tax-free on top of their retirement. And then they go back every year and ask for an increase, 20%, 30%. And like one of my clients recently, he went back, he paid, and several of them do this, paid $10,000 to a lawyer to get 100% disability. Now, what does that mean? Well, his retirement is about $6,000 a month from the military. On top of that now, he gets $4,000 a month for disability that's tax-free, but he's working for the government making $180,000 a year.
Wow. So it's not a bad living. And, you know, I don't really begrudge the military because, I mean, there's a whole, you know, putting your life on the line thing. But everybody else, and I always bring it back, when I was a kid, I remember, you know, I had a cousin who worked for the Department of Sanitation in New York, and my brothers were NYPD cops. And, you know, everybody was underpaid. They really were. Even teachers in the New York City Board of Education, they all complained that, you know, the Catholic school teachers were making more than them. And that was in the early 80s, mid 80s. And, you know, fast forward a bunch of years, and government service was the way to go. Everybody was local, state, federal. Everybody was making a killing, making money hand over fist. And it was blowing away what that work was earning in the private sector. And it's similar to what you're saying. I can't think of a private sector job that offers you 4 hours of comp time every month or whatever it is. I worked in the state government in New Jersey, and one of the amazing things they did, and they just stopped doing this several years ago, like less than 10, you were able to not take sick days. Again, not taking a sick day is as simple as being friendly with your boss and saying, hey, look, I'm not coming in today, but I don't want to use the sick day. And all right, we'll just make up, you know, blah, 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 and lots of games like that. And at the end of your 25 years of service, or 20 or whatever your contract was, you could say, you know what, I never took a sick day in these years. And they were allowed to sell or cash in their sick days for cash. And I mean, there was a time where people were retiring from the state government in New Jersey as, you know, administrative assistants. It didn't matter what position you were in, and getting several $100,000 in addition to their pension, which was at 65% of their pay. And oftentimes, if you had friends, you would get promoted to the highest level, even if it was just a month before your retirement, so you could get that higher rate and grade as your retirement pay. And we also had something in the state of New Jersey, still there, called deferred compensation, which is a 403B retirement plan that goes along with the pension in addition to. And then this third option of cashing out your sick days, your unused days off, where you could get for cash. And that they actually finally stopped, I think, at the end of the Christie administration, saying you're not allowed to do that. Or you can do it, but you can only get a maximum of $15,000 in a cash out. But it just blew me away that I was working with people that were like, yeah, when I cash in my sick days, I'll probably get around $228,000. And I was like, wow, you know, you could buy a small house for $228,000. It was just amazing to me that it was not on par at all. I don't know anybody in the private sector, unless they were an executive somewhere, that was walking away at the end of 20 or 25 years of service with $228,000 and a bonus as they left for not taking a day off, at least a sick day off, with a deferred compensation plan, a 403B, kind of like a 401k, and I should say, in addition to their actual pension at 65%. So it was, to me, it was just like, man, how is that sustainable? And in the New Jersey state constitution, it's protected. It says that they don't have to pay other obligations, but they have to pay the pensions. So when you look at that, you think, man, we need to fix this. Not because we don't want people to do well, but it's just an unrealistic well that we're doing. Nora, thank you for your call. Very, very insightful. I hope that you'll give us a call again. I appreciate it. Shout out to everybody listening in Stafford, Virginia on WMAL. And coming right back with the speed round. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, folks, it's a speed round. Get straight to the point. We've got minutes to go on the clock. Where do I want to go? I want to go to, let's go to Shane, Evansville, Indiana, WIBQ. Quickly, Shane, go for it.
Rich, I'm just one of the people out there listening, and yourself as well, and I am a fan. I listen to you quite a bit.
Thank you.
I'm a government worker. I'm a Republican. I can tell you that the union that I belong to is primarily Republicans. We are pro small government for the most part. We don't fall into our national union as far as their belief system, and we've got to vote for the Democratic Party.
Good.
And I take offense when people start talking about the locale and all. That doesn't happen to very many government workers, I will tell you. I'm in the Midwest here. I get my locale is the standard. I work in a prison. Today I'm driving home from after working 18 hours. It's not there's people out there that are hard workers.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
I've worked there almost 20 years, getting ready to retire, and I will tell you, it's not the easiest job in the world.
Yeah, listen, I believe you. And I think that's what it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be a public service. And I'm all for that. And I thank you for that service. I think what we're trying to do is eliminate this, I don't know, for better or worse of a word or lack of a better word, this club fed that many people end up joining, or even in the state governments. You know, it's not exclusive to the federal government. So yeah, don't take offense. This is you're a good guy that works for not a great place, and that probably does some good work. Not you, but the place you work for, and surrounded by a lot of people that are taking advantage of things. And there's not a lot of ways to solve that problem, but the way that the current administration is going about it, I think, is the only way to solve it, and hopefully we'll all come out the better on the other side. Shane in Evansville, thank you for listening. Thanks for your call and for your candor, your honesty. I appreciate it. Godspeed to you, my friend. And the music is there, so that means Paul, Jerome, Brody, and Jerry in Jacksonville, Florida on WDNB. I can't get to you right now. I'm sorry about that, but I'd love to chat with you tomorrow if you're able and available. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Until the next time, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.